You tell yourself you're done living in the past, and yet somehow it keeps finding you, in songs that sound like places, in smells that take you somewhere you didn't know you missed, in the quiet part of evening when the present starts to fade, and the mind drifts backward, not to escape, but to breathe. It's not weakness, it's wiring. You look back not because you're stuck, but because memory is how the human brain measures safety. You don't revisit the past to get lost. You go there to confirm that you've survived. The future is only possible for people who remember themselves first. Every generation ages differently, but the act of remembering is timeless. When you grow older, you start seeing memory less as rewind and more as orientation. The world keeps speeding forward, new devices, new rules, new rhythms, and suddenly you realize the map inside your head doesn't match the one outside. So you go back, not for comfort, but for calibration. You remember how things once made sense, how effort led somewhere, how voices had texture, how time had edges. That's why older hearts lean toward the past, not because it was perfect, but because it was comprehensible. There's a tenderness in that, in re-seeing the small certainties of youth, how mornings used to begin without alarms, how neighbors were reference points, how seasons marked time better than phones ever could. Nostalgia, when done gently, isn't escapism, it's alignment. It tells the nervous system, I've been here before, and I found my way through. Inside the brain, the regions that process memory and imagination overlap. When you recall, you're not replaying, you're rebuilding. And the same network that reassembles the past also rehearses the future. That's why people who reflect more don't necessarily live backward, they live deeper. Every look behind helps the mind simulate what might come next. When older adults revisit defining moments, the hippocampus and prefrontal cortex light up like two hands touching across time. Coordination between who you were and who you're still becoming. In that sense, nostalgia is a rehearsal for courage. It's the brain saying, here is how you made it last time. Modern culture calls it dwelling. Neuroscience calls it integration. You look back to make sense of change, to translate loss into language, to rebuild continuity when everything else becomes discontinuous. That's not regression, that's adaptation. The past isn't holding you hostage, it's holding you steady. Memory isn't a photo album, it's architecture. Each recollection is a beam that holds up identity. You don't live in the past, you live through it. The past builds corridors through which meaning travels back to you. When you share stories with someone younger, you're not just reminiscing, you're extending the blueprint. That's why conversations between generations matter. Their maintenance work on the emotional infrastructure of family. And when you catch yourself telling the same story again, it's not forgetfulness, it's persistence. The self rehearsing its continuity one more time, just to be sure the bridge still holds. So when you look back at the old house, the old photo, the old face in the mirror, you're not seeking youth, you're checking the structure of meaning. You're asking, is the person I was still connected to who I am? And if the answer is yes, you can walk forward without splintering. Because belonging, at its core, isn't about where you are, it's about remembering who built you. The older we get, the more time becomes a circle. We realize that what we call forward is just the long return to what mattered most. You stop chasing new milestones and start tending to meaning, watering what already grew inside you. You reread the letters, rewatch the grainy footage, not to re-enter it, but to re-understand it. Every glance backward becomes a quiet thank you to the younger self who kept you alive long enough to feel this peace. Looking back isn't refusal to move, it's movement of another kind, the kind that gathers momentum through gratitude. Because the past, when seen clearly, doesn't trap you, it teaches you. It shows you what endures when everything else changes. And maybe that's why we look back to feel forward. Because memory is how the human spirit checks its direction, not to stay behind, but to walk onward without forgetting the road beneath its feet. So tonight, when you find yourself revisiting old years, don't scold the impulse. Follow it. There's wisdom waiting in the echo. And sometimes, the only way to know where you're going is to remember what already taught you how to get there.